Hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind, and I am joined by a very special guest, which most of you are aware, especially from Raptors land, which would be Samson Folk. Mr. Folk, first, before I go to anything else today, how are you doing?
For folk. Very proper. I'm doing well. Always a chop to, always a chop. Always a blast to chop it up with you, Kenyon. We had our first, nice long conversation a few months back in February. We've let it, sit and fester to the point where we're like, okay, we'll finally get a podcast in once the season is over, once all the draft stuff. And hey, now we both have time making it happen. Excited to talk ball.
Absolutely. I mean, like one of these days, we will finish our conversation about downhill rim penetration with
Yes.
guards and stuff like that. We might talk about it a little bit near the end of this podcast, even because of the free agency. What's going to happen potentially. We will see. But before I get into that, I have a couple personal questions for you, and then we're going to go into just right into it. So, one of the things that you talked about was the importance of your parents and how they kind of invested in you. I think it's actually important that a parent always invests in a kid, or an adult always invests in a kid. It can be a big marker of success. You specifically talked about it from a basketball standpoint because I believe your parents kind of got you into that similar. I think it was your Michael Grange podcast. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about the importance of that, or what impact that has had on you, but yeah.
Sure. So my mom played basketball growing up, and she put a hoop in our driveway, which was, obviously it's a seminal moment in my life, seeing as I played a decent level of basketball growing up. And then I ended up covering it for work, which I enjoy and I feel lucky to do. My dad didn't play any basketball, didn't really know anything about it, but he was also, a student counselor. He worked in the school system. And so when there wasn't anybody to coach me in grade 12, when I was about to go out and try and get, scholarship offers for basketball and that kind of stuff, I needed a coach. And my dad, despite not knowing anything, read books on designing offense, on coaching basketball, and spent his, a decent amount of his spare time coaching. And then my brother is the guy who he liked basketball a lot more than me early. He was the one who he had a little bit more height than I did. He was a big, and he played club basketball. And so the club basketball team asked if anybody could bring some players to play against just for like an extra thing or whatever. So I went with him, and then the coaches thought I was good, and they asked me if I wanted to join the team, and that was when I was like 15. And then we started playing summer basketball, going to the States to play a little bit. And then, so my family, and then my little sister is great and she cheers everybody on. And so my family, everybody has played, a big role in getting basketball into my life. And then I just had to curate it separately on my own once I, was doing other things in my life. But my family had a huge, huge impact on getting me started in it, which is very important.
I mean, that's super important. I think the other thing is not to gas you up too much here, but one of the things that I appreciate is you've talked about the importance of covering players in a way that's humanizing, and now that you're you're in the scrum, so to speak, I think it's even more important to do. It's one of the things that I wanted to talk about today because I mean, you see, I don't know if it's just Raptors Twitter, I don't know if it's fan bases in general, but there seems to be a lack of that. And it's, yes, it is. We're watching an entertainment medium. We are watching um, people who are going to be viewed at some level as an asset from, the way that financials work. But I'm wondering, did you like have you created like a framework for that, or like how did you decide that you were going to,
I
I mean,
think
I shouldn't say how did you decide to be a nice person, but
I do think it is connected. I don't know about nice person, but just trying to have ethics and morals that kind of girder your behavior going forward.
Mhm.
I'm a very political person. I talk about it every once in a while on the podcast, my political leanings, but they also shape the way I comment on and cover players who are commodified nonstop. And the only approach in my mind to do that is to understand that you are part of the, even though you do it with good intentions and you do it respectfully and with humanity, I am part of the group of people who is commodifying that. The players play the game. I'm a representation of media that wouldn't exist without the players, a whole secondary market that pays people, provides livelihoods that, we'll talk a little more about that, I'm sure, like in the rest of this podcast. But all this stuff is built off of the backs of players. And you have to understand your relationship to players in that regard. But you also have to understand, like, considering that, you can cover them fairly, talk about shortcomings, but you have to do so in a very respectful, humanizing manner, especially since so many people really get caught up in the entertainment aspect and are willing to kind of toss away that humanity to pursue, I guess, a higher outcome for their own entertainment, a higher outcome for their own, whether it's betting or whether it's their cheering, whatever motivates them. A lot of times the humanity kind of gets thrown away. People stop becoming people. They start becoming the person on your TV screen who is, an amalgamation of your different rooting interests, whether it's, I want this team to win, whether it's I want more clicks on my video, whether it's I want this parlay to hit. There's a lot of different things that motivate people to act in an inhumane manner. And that doesn't even stop at media. So just understanding your relationship to the players and then understanding your relationship to humanity and trying to respect, those ethical guidelines, those moral, boundaries, super important. That's my framework. It's nebulous and not all laid out, but I think I just try and adhere to it based on I don't know, a person to person thing.
No, I think it's important. Like for me, I've always found the way that I've wanted to cover players on Basketball Rewind is I wanted to kind of go beyond the Raptors, obviously, but I also wanted to say, like, I think it's like I agree with you. You can critique players, you can evaluate players without it becoming a personal thing. And maybe this is my academic background and me talking, which kind of goes towards that, which is funny. But at the same time, there's still like a behavioral and incentive element that people sometimes miss out. And it's funny because you saw like the reports of Siakam, potentially wanting to stay, and whether that's to create leverage for himself or not, um, you know, I don't really fully comprehend why people are upset because it's kind of like, okay, this is the millionaires versus the billionaires. He has the right to exercise his, you know, his agency in a sense. You know, I think Bill Simmons calls it pre-agency, but yeah. So I think that that's really interesting. It's also very important, and I implore others to both check out your work, which you are going to plug in a second, but also I think that more people should cover it like you.
You actually, just a quick note, you hit on something super important: millionaires versus billionaires. A lot of people who amass a large amount of wealth, it comes based off of, taking advantage of other people. And the unique thing about the NBA and the players in particular is that they are labor. Even though
Yep.
they are exorbitantly rich, it comes as a byproduct of their labor, and they're being paid for, argued by union in the CBA. And so that's extremely important. And that very important, you have to create that delineation for why they would deserve your support. It's in everybody's best interest to support labor whenever possible, because labor represents the working class. The working class is what has been kind of had the rug pulled out from under them over the past, I don't know, since 1971 or something like that, when it was kind of in Canada, and then because we're close to America, built off of, the big war machine, the economy was affected by it, obviously, and now you have to protect labor at all
Yeah.
costs. I get a little bit too political, but anyway,
No, no,
yes.
no. It's important. I mean, it's one of the things that we'll definitely talk about more offline because again, like I can definitely talk about that type of stuff as well, and I love to as well. What I will say though is you forgot to plug yourself,
Yeah,
which is important.
I work at Raptors Republic. I'm a staff writer slash talker there. It is an independent media outlet. It is a credentialed media outlet, and it is responsible for a large portion of Raptors coverage, both currently and also people who cover the sport elsewhere. The most popular basketball show in Canada, obviously, William Liu and Alex Wong. Alex Wong is in a Raptors Republic guy, but Will Liu did come from there. Blake Murphy, yes. Eric Kareen wrote at Raptors Republic, believe it or not. Um, there's a big guy at the Athletic, Zach Harper. He wrote at Raptors Republic. Vivek Jacob, who is the Raptors writer, he wrote at Raptors Republic. Katie Heindel wrote at Raptors Republic. Basically, it's allowed a lot of people to get jump started into the industry, and by proxy of that, it's created a more diverse writers like scrum. You know, if you look at, and this isn't anything to say about, you know, print, but print right now is, well, I don't know about Michael now, but like Doug Smith, Mike Ganter, Ryan Woolstat, Michael Grange, like these, you know, it's white fellas who are the legacy media, and that's, you know, that's not their fault, but the
Yeah.
market is this way. One way to create a more diverse, you know, set of writers, talkers, is to make sure that you're not blocked from writing about the Raptors through a year-long internship that you can't afford to do. It's so that, okay, well, if you want to try and do it, you can start writing or talking for Raptors Republic, where you will be paid more than most other, as far as I know, outlets that are kind of like blog adjacent. Raptors Republic pays more. And so the thing about that is that Raptors Republic is now a subscription based site. Uh, you pay and you get my work and Lewis's work and some other writers, but for the most part, everything is still free. And so, why that is all important is so that you can get more diverse writers, jumpstart people, and so that people can be paid what they deserve. And that's the mission statement of Raptors Republic. That's where I come from. That's who I write for and talk for.
I
That's
think
the plug.
Yeah, no, I think the other thing too that's really interesting, again, this is just going slightly off script here, is that we have a very unique media landscape for the Toronto Raptors specifically, because in a sense, and I'm not saying that this is not, people don't take this the wrong way, but it's like Rogers is a media company. Rogers owns the team. Bell is a media company. Bell owns the team. So it's kind of, you always in the back of your mind, sometimes you wonder, like, not for the more independent media, but we don't have as many independent media people in Toronto by comparison to other markets in the US, which has, I think we are the only media company that owns a slew of teams, which is very interesting. So, you know, I don't know if you want to quickly comment on that or anything, but it's just something that I always find very not peculiar, but it's just interesting.
It is extremely peculiar.
Yeah.
It is extremely interesting. And I wouldn't say I know of any writer who it affects specifically, but I would say on the whole, it does make it probably a lot harder to garner, you know, proper critiques of the organization. And I would say, as I have alluded to for some time, especially prior to Nick Nurse leaving, but there's been there's been problems within the Raptors organization. There's been like organizational rot. People left because things were not, and that stuff probably wasn't adequately covered. Now, a lot of it predates my time there, and at this point in time, I'm just trying to get into, you know, knowing people, developing sources, all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, this is something that's fruitful in the next few years, but there was stuff going on with the Raptors organization that just wasn't covered. And, you know, maybe if there's more independent media outlets, that stuff does get covered. Now, that doesn't fall on the shoulders of any one writer to like, okay, they should have broken the story. But just on the whole, you look at it and you say, maybe this would have happened differently if it were elsewhere. I guess that's the difference, perhaps.
So before we get into it, does that mean that one day your background is going to be like a detective board with all these different strings to, you know, to the center, and it's like Larry Tannenbaum's you know, circled in the middle or something like that?
I don't think so. I quite enjoy writing about the basketball side of things. I
Gotcha.
want I like currently the sources I develop, we still talk about basketball. Not as
Okay.
much of it is about relationships. And because I really enjoy writing about the basketball, of it all. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But if by way of that you learn some things about the organization, relationships, stuff like that, sure. But there's stuff I know that I won't comment on
Of
because it's
course.
just like it's not basketball. And if anybody listens to my work or reads my work, it's basketball really. Not a lot of it is the drama or
I mean, it's pretty pure, to be
the
honest.
speculation or anything like that. And
Yeah,
that's what Raptors Republic is for, because we're not beating anybody to the punch really on sources, and we're not going to do the, you can actually look at, if you look at the way that Raptors Republic, the YouTube, the way I and the other podcasters, video makers, title videos, even that is a majorly stark contrast to the how most Raptors YouTube content titles their videos. And it's because it's like, it's not the big capitalizations, it's not the clickbaity stuff, it's not like the ooh is it this, it's just it's
basketball
honest.
rewind and Samson Folk epic debate.
Something like that. It's just,
And it's just really us just talking.
yeah, we earnestly try and cover the basketball at hand,
Yeah,
is what I would say we're doing for the most part. And I think that's reflected in the content, the work.
for sure. So yeah, so just to jump right into it, first and foremost, a man at hand, Gradey Dick, selected as the pick for the Raptors. What do you feel about Mr. Gradey Reed Dick? Were you happy? I believe you at one point said that you were convinced that he was a top four in your draft board.
He was the what I did was I was on Matt Cunningham, his podcast, and we did a mock draft for the lottery, and I
Mhm.
picked Gradey Dick to 5, the Pistons. And the reason why I did that is I thought Gradey was a fantastic fit next to a lot of what the Pistons were building, but also that a lot of my scout friends, some of them now work in the NBA, some of them are still working like for agencies or other things like that. But the intel I got was that Gradey is fantastic. And then I watched some Gradey stuff and I was like, wow, he seems really good. And then my dear friend Josh Codanera, who is a professional scout, said he thought that Gradey would be a top 5 player from this draft. So I said, I took that to heart. And so I took Gradey top 5. Considering the Raptors were at number 13, he was always like number 1 on my board for like, if he falls to the Raptors, wow, that would be great. I couldn't believe it on draft night when it happened. I thought
Yeah,
he could go as high as like 7 or 8. Of course, he worked out with some of the teams in that range. Just to be honest with the listener, the viewer, and he ended up falling. He had like a little foot thing going on, but there was a lot of stuff about his workouts with the Raptors and with other teams that was super impressive. And so, even though as Bobby Webster mentioned, you don't want workouts to be surprising,
no,
really.
yeah,
It's more important to see it on tape
either
versus
surprising in a good way or a bad way, either.
right. The
Yeah.
the little tidbits you get, the scoops from the workouts aren't that important, but it's nice to hear that players succeed in the different contexts, I guess. I
So
was happy, man.
he was the first person, along with Bryce, that I covered with Coach Roach on this channel, actually. And for Bryce, we both said walking bucket. For Gradey, um, as we kept covering all of these people, we basically ended up saying, of the guards, because we did just assume that Gradey wasn't going to be there. And so we said,
Mhm.
of the guards, like we want Case and Wallace, or of the guards is Kobe Buffkin, or and it's just interesting because it's like when we got there and it's like, okay, Jet Howard. I was like, okay, good pick for them. His family did the Tiger Woods, celebration, and that was beautiful to see. In draft night is always it reminds me, it's gonna be like kind of like a random comparison. But for those of you who are familiar with the match in medicine, it's a lot like the match where some people end up going where they don't want to go or where they do want to go. Some people are happy. Some people are just happy to get picked. So it's a very emotional night for a lot of families involved, and it's just really beautiful to see. Before I continue on with Gradey, if you could put into 3 words or 3 terms, like the needs coming into this draft that you felt like the Raptors needed to address. For me, it was offensive initiation off the bench at minimum, and then shooting, of course, and point of attack defense.
Hmm. And some of that would have been contingent probably on who you thought would be leaving, returning,
Even
etc.
even regardless, I thought just what slipped last year, like the point of attack defense was not great. And I felt like you needed because of when the draft happens, you kind of it's just it is what it is. So you had to like at least get someone to answer that. But also I thought that within that range you could find those solutions to as many of those problems as you could.
Okay, so my top two would be shooting, hopefully of the elite variety, and then connective passing coupled with that shooting.
Right.
Brady does both, in my opinion, extremely well. Because a lot of the guys, like if the Raptors go out and sign Seth Curry with the mid-level exception or something like that, you're getting shooting, but you're not really getting the connective passing at the same level. And a lot of shooters don't have that connective passing, i.e., why Grady's potential is quite high as a connector, and why I think he's a great fit next to wing initiators on the Raptors, and then probably I don't know, I rim finishing. I think it's so important for this team. Grady doesn't provide that at like a super high level. I don't
No.
think like 52% on layups. He made 15 out of his 18 dunk attempts. He can get up there. He's not a terrible vertical athlete. His struggles are more so like in the horizontal. Uh, he's not quick.
Yes.
His feet are pretty slow. He can get up a little bit, but I think that for the most part, it's the pairing of shooting and then the connective passing that can work really well and create advantages for other players because of the aggressive closeouts and the advantage situations he'll be working from. So, point of attack defense, I don't think it's as big of a problem going forward, but I guess we'll see.
Yes, well, to be determined.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought coming in we also had a lot of redundancy, which is not a bad thing because it can create a pathway to balance. If you're deficient everywhere, that's a problem. So the fact that you have some redundancy means that you can kind of work from a position of strength to find what you need. So I felt comfortable coming into this draft. From that standpoint, I still feel that way. I think what's interesting about Grady, aside from the fact, top, arguably the best shooter in college this past year, I think that he, in a way, provides you a pathway to at least pseudo run it back, but at least start pivoting towards your two best skill sets that haven't been optimized. At the Raptors Republic party, I asked like, had we ever built a team around Siakam? And I think it was Esfandari that had the mic in his hand. He said, "No, not really." Um, I think that regardless of what happens with Siakam, Barnes and Siakam have a similar skill set in terms of the playmaking. I think right now Pascal probably is able to generate a lot more gravity, but at least you're putting more shooting around that, and I like that as a kind of a jumping off point for whichever direction. I was afraid that we would have Jarris Walker fall to us. Not that there's anything wrong with the young man, but it's just I was like, ooh, we have a bit much of that already. So yeah.
It definitely, I think that there are a lot of differences in Siakam and Scotty's skill sets, but the thing that is most important is that they are hampered by the same type of defense.
Yes.
Like that's the most common similarity. Isn't that they're very different in approach. They're very different in what
Yes.
they succeed at, but they are affected by the same defensive response. And Grady, being able to put Grady, OG, plus another shooter on the floor potentially is what should help a lot from Scotty making reads against live defenses, Pascal having driving lanes open up, and just especially like they'll have different responses. Pascal is probably more so if, depending on what the team decides to do, it's that Pascal now has more room to work because he is a very reliable worker in that he can score, he can play make. And if he's not facing two and a half guys all the time, he'll be able to get into more advantageous positions. Gradey is a guy who should open up more of those one and a half type defensive schemes that Pascal will be seeing. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And with
Yeah.
Scotty, what he's doing is, yes, he'll open up part of Scotty's driving game into the future, sure, maybe a bit early on, but that's not really Scotty's bag anyway. Like Scotty he's not a big like quick line drive guy. He can't punch a gap.
No.
He doesn't do like stampede cuts. He's not quick putting the ball down. He's a really quick passer, but he's not a quick
Yes.
drive decision maker. And he also can't beat guys off the bounce really either. He has to bash them into a spot where he's comfortable shooting. But what he can do, Gradey, is immediately pair with Scotty's dribble handoff game.
Yep.
And like this is something that Lewis at Raptors Republic wrote about, which was great when Gary opted into his contract, was that
Always good
Gary,
off. Yeah, DHOs.
yes, that Scotty is
Yeah.
like a homing beacon for like, where's Gary? How can I initiate a dribble handoff? How can I get into these sets that utilize my motion, my passing sense, and somebody else's shooting? And while Gradey did struggle with dribble handoffs at the college level and did struggle a little bit with physicality, I think that's something that will be a burgeoning part of his game. It's something I'm really looking forward to covering and paying attention to, which is why I asked him specifically about dribble handoff
I saw
footwork
that. Yep.
at the presser. Hopefully, I get to sit down with him in Vegas. I have a lot of stuff I want to ask him about, but yeah, I think he helps a lot. I haven't read Lewis's piece today. I did retweet it though, but I haven't read it yet. But he did write about how Gradey fits with Scotty and Pascal. And while I haven't read it, to anybody who wants to read a great writer and a great analyst's thoughts on that, feel free to go check it out, I guess.
It's on one of my many tabs. I didn't have the time to read it today, but it is on one of my many tabs, and I did have to log in today because for whatever reason it timed me out. So that's next on my agenda for reading today. Um, okay, so the other thing too is that I think he provides a bit of lineup versatility, uh,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that everyone's healthy, of course. And regardless of who's here, I think I imagine, I mean, I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead here. Is that like, I'm curious what your dream lineups would be, and like, or even like a fun lineup that you would like to see. Because for me, you might hate this because I know you're kind of out on the Vision 6-9, but you could do a Vision 6-9 lineup with shooting, with him, and Scotty, and potentially OG and Siakam, and Otto. Um, which could be very, very interesting to see. But you can also go in a lot of other directions as well. And then I'll finally say this: it's one thing to have the talent and the skill to shoot. Mr. 99%, Matt Thomas comes to mind. It's another thing to not hesitate and have that confidence. And you see that suit that he wore. He does, like, he's it's not only the drip people, but he's dripping with confidence. I don't think he's ever going to be afraid to shoot open shots. So those, as you said, those margins, those because the NBA at its core is really a game of margins and slim slivers. Those get jammed a little bit, from like millimeters maybe to centimeters, which helps a lot of other people. Really quick thoughts on that. Of course, the backdoor cuts as well. I saw you ask about that, and I watched a couple. Him versus Baylor, gorgeous. But yeah,
It's regarding the lineup, it's definitely, there will be those lineups played next season if they're running it back.
yeah,
God, do I have qualms about Jakob, Pascal, Scotty.
yes,
Real,
I do too.
it's so tough. I'll table that. But Gradey, as far as being a guy who works off ball, is responsible for his own usage in relation to being of utility to stars. That is like his whole bag. He's always lifting at the right time. The shake action off of pick and rolls to make sure that the spacing on the weak side is utilized properly. He's so good at that. as far as forming up off of drives naturally, just kind of like interpreting the floor, seeing where he's supposed to go, finding the right passing angle the way that a roller is supposed to for their ball handler. He's also doing that sliding with the driver to make sure that he's opening up passing angles. He's great at that. And also just as a guy who like the relocation is tremendous.
Yes.
I know people like I was glad they showed it when he got drafted, but he got drafted and whatever TV network it was showing the different things. And you see like grab a ball, push it in, pop back out to the 3-point line, like it's movement, rapid. And he talked about how much conditioning he plans on doing so that he can be that type of guy on the bigger NBA floor for a full game. And he's aware of it. He's a smart kid, and I think that he's as far as a guy who's going to help out and the millimeters to centimeters, the margins. I think that he's a guy who can work within the new margins of the NBA, and it's especially helped by a high pickup point, a high release point, and a quick release. And he can get the ball out. So I'm expecting a lot of good things from Gradey.
I think the other thing too, I mean, he's 19 years old. He's going to be 19 when the season starts because I believe his
Pretty
birthday
wild.
is in November, I believe, on the 20th. So here's the thing about it, you know, I think Blake said it best, but it's true. It's like you don't really know how guys are gonna respond to a strength and conditioning coach. Some of these things are a science to a point, but also there's a lot of data points that you're missing to really know. But he seems to have a good frame, and I think he's a good overall size, and he's young enough that you definitely expect him to fill out. You said something at the very end. I'm gonna kind of shift. I'm gonna paraphrase it and kind of use it as a jumping off point, but you talked about like how he can take advantage of certain margins, right? The thing for me is that like within that comes like the economic movement, and also which I think I messaged you about that. I want to talk to you about, but I think also it's like his release is so like, just even before I get into the economic movement part, his release is so pure, clean, fast. Like it is like, I saw and I know people are worried about the Scotty Summer vibe tape, the validity of that. Um,
Well, I'll say this: people speed up his jumper.
yeah,
Like
so
it's a common
I've
editing
been
thing.
told, I've been
Yeah,
told. So,
yeah.
but I think okay, so he speeds up his jumper, and like the one thing that I know Coach Roach has told me for the longest time is he was just like, Barnes needs a faster jumper to really get there. And it's like I look at Gradey and it's just like I need to time it to know, because like I have not seen a jumper that fast on the Raptors in a very long time, if ever that I can think of. I'm sure if I go back, I can definitely think of it. But it seems like from a speed and release standpoint, it's like NBA ready, and it's a beautiful thing. I'll kind of parlay that into the economic movement because he also shoots and he's always in air on balance. And the one thing that I looked for from an offensive standpoint was how clean someone was with their movements. It wasn't about being fancy, but it's like, in a way, I'll look at like Pascal. He's like incredible with what he does. But sometimes I look at him, I'm like, dude, you could save energy, right? Like I look at like the first time I saw it and it made my eyes just go like crazy was Kawhi, because it was like every single step or thing was like, I don't know if like he did this on purpose or it was just muscle memory, but it looked like it was purposeful and like decisive and just very specific, and it wasn't necessarily complicated either. That's something that Grady does really well. I don't know if that's something that you've noticed. We could use that. It's kind of a weird form of being dynamic. But yeah.
Efficiency of movement is, of course, it's incredibly important. Grady, now, I'll be interested to see what that looks like at the NBA level for sure. But as far as Grady really taking advantage of empty side actions, efficiency of movement, decisiveness is like when you get empty side, you can, you know, pretty easily turn 2-on-2s into 2-on-1s, whether it's pick and roll or dribble handoff or something like that, or even just back cutting if they try and, you shouldn't top block in an empty side action, but if teams want to try and like push him downhill, it's like, well, okay, if I make that decision when they want me to make that decision, they're going to cover the back cut pretty well. But if I play them into, taking that step over, even though they want to push me, then it's like all this stuff. It's about, yeah, when do you take this step? When do you try and beat the defense? And, understanding the time on the clock and all that kind of stuff to do it. Kawhi was always really fantastic at that. And it was kind of funny back then, Kawhi on the Raptors, and then Kyle Lowry is, he's the orchestrator. He's constantly getting people the ball when they didn't know they needed it, but it hit them at the exact right time. And Kawhi and Kyle didn't have that much interplay. Kawhi was just like, get me the ball. I'll find my own
Move out of the way.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Get me the ball. If it comes with 13 on the shot clock, if it comes with 8, like I'll get into my bag and the ball will go up, before the clock runs out, and I'm going to hit a decent percentage of them. And that got a little bit better. But guys, I talked about this with Scotty, a little bit with Grady's, like being the author of your own usage is powerful, but it's really complex because when you're
Yes.
an NBA player and you have a skill set, there's a lot of different things you can do. Gradey is a guy who I think understands his own skill set very well at the college level. We'll see at the NBA level. But knowing what you want to do on the floor is just as important as having the capability to do it on the floor. And going to things that work for you is extremely important. We see players move away from stuff that works all the time. And that's what coaches are really there for, is not, some coaches are really nice with the pen. They can draw something up, but you're there to remind, like, hey, when you're running this, like let's say it's a pick and roll, they're pinching in. Okay. You're the guy off there, cut baseline, see what happens. If the guy pinching in drops down, then you can drag it out and you can turn it into like a pinch post action or like an empty side ISO or something like that. We can move to the second thing. You have to be able to move in concert with the other players. You have to be able to make decisions as an off-ball player and make decisions as an on-ball player. And Gradey is a guy who's very good at making those decisions quickly and in concert with the guys he's supposed to be supporting. So it's an efficiency of movement, yes, but also an
Yes.
efficiency of decision making, I would say.
Well, and it's funny because I'm staying away from saying IQ lately because I know that they.
Feel is the term.
Oh
Feel
yes,
is
feel. I use situational awareness is
sure.
the latest thing. Um, but yeah, he's very very he. There's good foundations there. Just simply put, even on the defensive end, I noticed that positionally he knows he almost like he didn't get blown by that often because of his footwork and also because I think he knew he didn't have the best feet. He's aware of his resource kit, so he is more likely, at least at the college level, to get you know someone splashing a three in his face than to get blown by. But I'd rather that because he at least has the length, and that's something I think you can kind of work on. To kind of shift away from Gradey for just a second, um, we're gonna now just shift over to the rest of the roster really quickly. I so beyond the locker room said to me, and it made me think on this team. Can Precious and Boucher both get minutes?
This is tough. It's really, really tough.
Yeah,
Otto comes back healthy,
yeah,
presumably. He found his
yeah.
toe.
50, even
Everything's
50 games is what I'm.
right. Brady has to get minutes.
Yeah,
Gary opted in.
yeah,
Precious is, Coloco's seen as the young big on the roster. He's like
yes,
150 days younger than Precious.
yes,
Like it's, they're, even though one, you're talking about different levels as far as like who's closer to extension, but
yes. I was gonna say Precious is in a contract year, of
yeah.
course, but yeah,
And these guys are young. They need minutes. Precious, God, does he have the potential to? Like
there's
he just
like three
has.
distinct pathways for him to become like what different things, and I think one of those has gotten cut off with Coloco's emergence late season. But it's like there's still two pathways, and there's 48 minutes at every position, and it's like he needs minutes. So
Yeah.
sorry to cut you off there.
No, no, that's okay. But it's a good point. Is that like Precious is multifaceted in his own approach. he has endless potential for like quite a few different outcomes, and you just have to make sure that he gets to hit one of them. Getting Precious on a good deal, hopefully for him and the team over the next, like for his extension, is paramount to this team's success, especially if you want a team that has wing initiators and like whether it's Pascal or Scotty, and teams are going to switch bigger guys out onto them. Precious being able to make teams afraid of like that flash into the post to bully guys who switch, but also that like we saw against Joel Embiid, having the bigger guys afraid to play in space against him, while
Yes.
also having hopefully above average to all NBA level defense on the other end. That's just like an insane outcome and one you have to pursue. And you can't and I like Chris Boucher.
Of
I think
course.
coverage of his game, probably nobody's written more as far as like analysis about it than I have over the past couple of
He
years.
he wins minutes.
He wins minutes, and the tough thing is you can't let a guy on basically like the mid-level exception over the next couple of years stop you from trying to pursue an all-star outcome for another young big on the roster.
Yes.
And especially with the Raptors doubling down on the lack of shooting with Jakob, it's like how do you possibly justify playing Chris out there in a lot of lineups instead of Otto? And it's just like they can't go super big because Gary's still there. So
Yeah, because I
I don't
wouldn't
know, man.
consider those two floor spacers.
Yeah,
Um, no
they
offense to them.
I think that they're searching for a remedy to the Chris Boucher situation.
Cam
I thought it
Johnson?
was going to
I'm just
be
kidding.
I thought it was going to be Phoenix because Phoenix was trying something at the deadline with Chris
Mm,
Boucher. They love Chris Boucher, but with Phoenix getting Beal and everything that and Katie and everything that happened over there, I don't
yes.
think it'll be them. But I don't know. I don't know if Chris will be there come training camp. And if he is, if I were Chris Boucher, I'd be like, damn, I have to make a compelling case here and over the first stretch of the season for minutes because they're not going to be handed to me probably. So
Uh,
especially Precious and Chris both have this, but as far as guys who are going to hang on to the ball at like the 45 in the corner and maybe take a little bit of time to jumpstart the next play, if Darko is getting to implement the system he wants, that stuff is not going to
yeah.
sit well. I don't think.
Because I notice even the way that Precious sometimes likes to play is very different than Boucher, but Precious almost likes to survey and then
Mm-hmm.
just get into a guy.
Yep.
He might have to change the way he plays slightly, and that'll be interesting to see in the Darko system. Hypothetically, we don't know, um, so I'm really curious to see what the offensive system looks like under Darko for sure. I think the other tough question is probably um, the guards, depending on who they target in free agency. Say they go for certain mid-level exceptions, and I'll just again just jump ahead a little bit. I'll say I'll give you a list, and you can tell me if you're interested in any of these
Sure.
guys or if you have your own list, which is regardless of Fred, which we'll get into in just a second. But Dante from the Warriors, Nikhil Alexander Walker. I've been driving this propaganda train so we can tamper for Shea one day for the longest time. Josh Richardson, Shake Milton, and Cam Johnson. If we really have a lot of space, right? Cam Johnson is where that goes. You mentioned
Cam
Seth
is
Curry as
the
well.
Cam is the non-Fred.
Yeah, Cam is like, yeah.
Yeah, no MLE for Cam.
No, 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 no. It's
The rest of the guys though, I don't like. I don't think any of those guys make it past MLE. So
yeah. So these are all MLE targets for the
and none
most
of
part,
those are
except for Cam.
yeah, and none of those are sexy. Like the listener, the viewer is
No.
probably like, damn. Um,
I tried to
Curry,
keep it reasonable.
yeah, Curry is. I think the in your head you go, okay, that's dependable. That's something like it's also the last name people like, but he is a fantastic shooter.
Mhm.
Uh, the defense is tough, very tough. The playmaking, sometimes it's okay, but
Yeah.
I mentioned it's passable. Dante is maybe there's some people who think like there's a lot of upside here. because he's an athlete, people like that. Maybe he hits threes for a year and it ends up being a good deal. He's also an okay guy as far as like pump, put the ball down, lay down, or like spray to the corner.
He moves the
Nikhil,
ball. Yeah.
yeah, Nikhil, he splits people, man. People are really, really split on Nikhil, and I think I just try and like ride the center because
Right.
I don't have to have a take on Nikhil.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything to compel me that okay, he's like it's not going to work out. And Chris Finch saying we love him, he's the best. We love his place on the roster. That's good, but also like I still think I need to see more.
Yeah. I
Whether
mean,
that's going to
there's
be on the Raptors,
also yeah. I was gonna say there's also FIBA Nikhil versus NBA Nikhil, which is a
yeah.
very different experience so far. If you can get FIBA Nikhil, then it's like no brainer.
Yeah. I
It's,
also like Shake. Shake
yes.
I
Yes.
do. I think Shake is a better defender than people think. I think
Yes.
he's also a better on ball initiator than people think, but he also doesn't shoot as good as his jump shot mechanics would lead people to believe. And I think, like, man, if Shake could have a year, I'd be interested in Shake. I think of that group, if we were looking for like a short term outcome,
Yep.
not like maybe you get Nikhil and then it works out well and all that kind of stuff, and you sign Shea 3 years later or whatever,
Yeah.
however
Yeah.
it works out. But Shake maybe is the most interesting to me as far as a guy who will like run a pick and roll, can hit it. Like I think Shake would probably be able to hit Jakob reliably, and I also think that if teams were playing it a certain type of way, if they're pinching in off of wings that don't shoot that well, I think Shake's go to in the mid range would be important on the Raptors. I don't know. And if he hits his, spot up threes next to guys like Scotty and Pascal, maybe that's really good. Shake is probably my favorite of that group. If I had to
And just you skipped over Josh Richardson. Now he's one of the older guys
right.
besides Curry, but he's not too old actually. I think he's 29. I think, off the top of my head. He may. Yeah, thoughts on him?
Josh is fine.
Yeah, I
He's
know.
really,
It's not a
really
sexy
up and
list.
down. He's really up and down. And I will say that I guess it's most dependent on the Raptors if they get to implement the system, because I think Josh really struggles when the ball starts dying. Like
Yep.
when the shots come out of rhythm, I think that his 3-point percentage goes like
Yeah.
way down. But in an offense where the ball kind of hums, I think he makes a lot of good plays. And while I know Darko is saying like the offense will hum, this is how I want it when he's talking about implementing offensive systems elsewhere, that's still going to be hard to realize with the lack of shooting, even with Gradey, with the
Yeah.
lack of shooting on the
Grady's
roster.
one guy.
Grady's one guy. Gary opts in. Gary is like so objectively a good to great shooter, yes, but
Yes.
it's also concentrated in certain parts of the floor. And when we talk about guys who get paid money and guys who have to start, three of them, like, I don't know, Scotty, Pascal, Jakob, it's going to be hard to make music out of the half court offense, in my opinion. And Josh Richardson is a guy who shoots well when the music is playing. Maybe not as much during like a syncopated Danny Brown track. Maybe you're looking more so at like 29, 31% there. So I don't know. I like Shake the best, I think.
Okay, okay. And you even talked about Seth Curry, which I talked to Coach before this, and he asked me to ask you about him. So, shout out
I
to
like Seth.
Coach. I do too. I do too. I again, like I tried to focus on like I know people are like, what about getting like Kyrie, and I'm like, that's a whole, it's complex and stuff like
I
that.
God, oh
Yeah, we don't
jeez.
have to.
It would
It's just
it would just
complex. It's a
it's
lot.
just
It's an
complex.
experience. I'm
You
not
know,
ready for the experience, sir. Yeah.
it's I like politics. I
Yes.
do. I like
Yes.
thinking about politics. I like reading about politics. I like talking about labor politics because I think those are so
Yes.
objective. Once, if oh man,
Those
there's just
politics are not your favorite.
so many types of politics come into play when
Right.
Kyrie is here. That
Right.
like, and also you talk about like fandoms and stuff like that. Fans want reporters to comment on certain things, and like you get asked to comment on things that you never think you would have to comment about when that comes
Might have to do a
And
bit more research.
but it's also that like but it's also that like you
Yeah.
upset a large group of people regardless. Even if you do
Yes.
the research and you feel like you've satisfied things on your own end and you say, okay, this is what I believe for this,
Yep.
the other group is going to be pissed.
I mean,
Like,
even just like reporting on normal basketball, it's like there's divisions. There's there's civil war out there,
Gradey
people.
didn't get the text,
Yes, yes, exactly.
you
You
could
know,
just misinterpret a quote and everybody's angry.
I put that out there. I was like, he said the majority. Why are we assuming who the majority is? I'm like, I like.
It's really parasocial. Like I hope I will. Geez, I'll talk about this someday. But I like hope that people realize that God, stan culture is. I'm glad people like players. I'm glad, but you have to realize in your own life what type of relationship you're forming and parasocial and like and how it affects your mood and how it affects your behavior and how it affects your behavior towards other people, whether it's talking
Yes.
to them in an online fashion or commenting on them. And like if all your perceptions are starting to get really negative and combative and all that kind of stuff, it's like you are in a very unhealthy parasocial relationship. And this is not what this is meant for. This is not what sports is supposed to be. This is what our celebrity and the fetishization of it and the lack of certain pillars of society have pushed us towards. God, it's bad. It's
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's you could make a whole show just on that. And I say to people, I'm like, yeah, you don't want to get to the point where you're basically having like a body pillow of a player. I mean, if you do, that's good for you. It might be a very comfortable body pillow. You know, not judging body pillows here.
it's
Um,
it's important it's important for the things you enjoy, at least some of them,
yes.
be cemented in reality. And while the player is cemented in reality and your observation of them is cemented in reality, the interplay there is one sided. And like it's so important that people accept that. It's
Yes.
one sided. Yeah.
So yeah, with that being said, we'll now go to one of the final topics, but the toughest topic, which I'm sure you know what I'm going to talk about. There was news today that you discussed on Twitter, I think, and
Yeah. Short discussion.
yes, very short discussion. It was a singular tweet, if I do say so myself.
Yes.
But and like literally within the character limit, it wasn't. Samson Folk is not paying for the blue, so um, basically, the reporting is that Fred might be looking at 40 per year over 2 years. Now I put on the economic cap, and I was saying that if the reporting on the Raptors side from before was, I think, what was it, 90 over 3, if I were him, I'd take the 80 and then re up later. That's just me. But we don't have to go into our own decision. I'm just, in terms of the velocity of money and investing, give me the bag now and figure it out later. And while I'm still young and the TV deal is still fresh, let me get my money. But I think the interesting thing is that by and large, from the Fred camp himself, he is usually not a quiet individual, particularly this year. Um, it's interesting to me that he is a little bit more on the quiet side lately, and I'm just wondering, um, first of all, what do you even think of that number? I was thinking more 35 is where I had him pegged at. And not I couldn't see him getting anything less than 32 per year. But yeah, it's definitely much higher than your negotiation with Trey.
Hmm. People hate it, by the way.
I,
People
I,
thought
I like the framework. I'm gonna tell you right now. I like the framework because I totally got the whole like, okay, certain guards. I mean, beyond is a little harsher than me, but he's just like, I mean, you look at Allen Iverson beyond the age of 30, and I think he's used the term fossilized, which is pretty tough. But it was just like, yeah, it's very tough for guards who are below a certain stature to remain productive at a certain level beyond a certain age. And so I understood the length of the deal for sure. You were saying,
explosion is imperative to the Raptors, their latest two-way, Noel. He is rapid player. He's awesome. I
I
think
watched him a
everybody
bit. He's
everybody who watches him, especially at Summer League, they're gonna fall in love with his game because he's gonna look like one of the best players there. and like he's just going to be
He is
incredible.
burst.
Whew, does he ever? And even he is going to struggle adjusting to the length
Yes.
at the NBA level. I hope he makes it. I do. He's a guy you want to talk about, a slow jumper needing a faster one. He's
Yes.
a guy for sure. But if Fred loses burst, we talked about margins earlier, centimeters, millimeters, that it goes quick for small
Yes.
guards.
Yes.
In the piece I wrote about it, I was kind of looking at, what the market is for guards. And in the 32 to 36 million per year range, you currently have like Jordan Poole, Drew Holiday, Donovan Mitchell, and
Probably you probably have Chris Middleton as well around that range. I'm guessing.
yeah, Chris, yeah, guard forward, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
doing point guards and combo guards,
Right.
via
Right.
spot rack or whatever, and those guys, that's what they make, but they're very team friendly contracts in the context of the cap. Like De'Aaron Fox making 32, Mitchell making like 34. That's insanely good for the teams. It's not good. Well, it's fine for them, but it's not like they're making the biggest bag. Fred, it was tough to see him. I said I expected, I think 3 years, 90 million, or 4 years, 108 if the Raptors were to sign him.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of what they're kicking around. But if Fred gets 40,
It's hard to say no to that.
in Houston, I don't know how you say no to that. And especially as you mentioned, like take 40. And some people are saying, well, Fred would want longer term. I don't know, because
I don't.
you take 280
Yeah.
instead of 390. By the time the contract is done, the mid-level exception is what, like 7-8% of the cap.
So it'll be like 15.
You'll
or
already
17.
right, yeah. You'll already, if you fall all the way from a 40 million, like an almost max guy in 2 years to mid-level exception guy, you're still making more than the 390.
Yeah.
Like, you just are. And Fred is a confident man.
Yes.
He's probably saying, I'll be fine in 2 years. I'll make stuff work. Whether that happens, I don't know. That's for, people who are very in tune with his body, his health, his analytics, the insider stuff to decide, and for him to decide. But how do you turn down 280? I just don't like so much.
Unless someone throws him 50 or something like. I don't think he's even eligible for that. But like, it's
Right.
like the short term and that level, it's really hard. So I'm not saying this is not reporting people. Samson's definitely not reporting. He just tweeted someone else's report. So just keeping you safe there. But it's just that amount of money you could see him going, which does create a couple of avenues. Now, I was listening to I consume a lot of basketball media people in my spare time when I'm not studying. I was listening to Nate Duncan's podcast, and they were actually talking about this, and it was released like I think 2 hours ago, funny enough, or 3 hours ago at this point. Which sorry for taking up so much time. But yeah, and what was interesting is that they basically came to the same conclusion that if Fred goes, what do you do? I have my own opinions. I think that I'll tell you what Nate said for the Dunked On podcast. They basically outlined that it's probably hard for you to become so bad that you are in that top 6.
Right.
So
the pick is gone.
The pick is gone. Yeah. So you have to just probably you're going along with Pascal. At least for a year, you're at least hoping that the reports are true that he's amenable to a contract extension, and you probably go from there. And then Jak, you probably also, I'm guessing, I can't remember what they said, but I think that they were like you keep him, but you kind of I think Jak's contract, whatever it is, aside from the fit issues, I think that Jak will age well into his contract because he's in his prime. I don't remember a center that the Raptors have had in their prime.
No, Jak is good.
Jak
is good. The Celtics should try and move heaven and earth to get him.
They should.
Their team.
I'm hoping they do, because if he goes, I think that there's some avenues there as well.
By the way, I said this just this I said this shortly after we had the end of season stuff. I was like, Yak isn't like a surefire thing.
Yep.
The Raptors have to make a compelling case because Jakob, it was different in Toronto this time than it was the last time he
Yeah,
was
you
there.
opened the door and it's a little moldy. I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
it's well, and so
What did you guys
you
do to my
know,
bed?
there's workout equipment in here.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
There's no bed. It's just a, just a cot. Sorry.
Yeah, one of those day beds where somebody reads. I do think they have to make a really compelling case. Like, it's not like, oh, they got Yak. It's not the Masai trade for Precious where he says like, you're mine now. Jakob's
Yeah,
theirs for a couple months, and then they have to like convince again, hey, this is a good spot for you, because Jakob, it's important to mention, he played a little bit of meaningful basketball, like a
I
little bit
noticed that there
on
was
the
a lot of,
Raptors,
yeah,
a little bit on the Spurs. He wanted it bad. He wanted this Raptors team that he got traded to be good. And they told him, hey, we're making it to the playoffs. You're going to be a pillar of like a playoff defense. And we think we have the guns in an open NBA to try and make that run. And didn't happen. They have to sell him on that again,
yep.
knowing that they were already wrong once. So like, I don't know what situation could pop up that Yak is like, I'll take a little bit less money, but like, just the Raptors, they got to do their job. They
Yeah.
got to get him back there.
Yeah, I mean, it would be tough to lose. I now, even with the Fred thing, I don't think that Houston's going to lose all of their, like, what is it? They have close to $60 million that they can create in space. I don't think that they're going to lose 40 right out. There's ways, there's pathways. My namesake there could possibly come back. That I wouldn't be against Kenyon coming here. Um,
Would you rather Kenyon or Kevin?
Kevin Porter.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other juniors that I wouldn't mind on that team. Yeah, they have a lot of juniors. I'm just gonna
There's
split.
juniors everywhere in this league, man.
It's juniors and Jalen's. We just need a Jalen Jr., which
Yeah.
I don't think we have on in the NBA now that I think about it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there needs to be some sort of rule where you can only have certain you can only have one or you can only have two or something like that. Um, Kevin Porter Jr. is interesting. I think there's a reason why he got the contract as he did, right? Where it's basically team options for the rest of his contract. I think there might be certain things around maturity that I would be concerned with. And I don't know if that has worked itself out in that specific marketplace, given the lack of NBA adults
Infrastructure, sure.
or, yes, infrastructure. Um, I think with that being said, yeah, that's a really tough question.
Yeah.
He's a good player. Like, he's a really good player.
He's got the talent. He's a water dancer with the ball. He's one of the most special, the Raptors, they like special movers of their own, unique movers. He's one of the best.
Do you
Fluidity, explosion.
do you feel like we would have the infrastructure to support him?
That I don't know. He's that's like a talent ad, but I
Yeah.
really don't know.
Yeah.
I especially since his good run in Houston was pretty short. The rest has been like marred with, a little bit of like, I don't like doing the like behavioral stuff, but like behavioral oddities that pop
Yes.
up, let's say. And then on the court, I feel comfortable saying a lot of bad decision making. Like he's
Yes.
just like, some of the decisions he makes on ball are just like, these are losing decisions. This doesn't work. Why are you doing this? Like if you played, you can't make a guy play how you want, but you just wonder if he played with a little bit more pace in this action, if he played with a little bit more sense over here. It's like, I don't know, but yeah, maybe a bit long on Kevin, I guess.
And then the other two options for Fred, and you can tell me which one you prefer. I guess in terms of signing trades, you can even add Houston in this. It would be, I think Lakers are very interesting. They definitely seem to have chosen some of the guys that the Raptors worked out multiple times with Maxwell Lewis, for sure. And I don't think that LeBron wants a bunch of young children, or young adults, I should say, on his
There's
team.
a real divide in the NBA with the youth movement now. Like it had
Oh,
started, but now it's huge. Coaches, vets, front office, like
I think
some
I
coaches.
tweeted this actually, and you liked the tweet, and it was about. I said, "Is this the only league that all of the older generation dumps on the Ute?" We'll say,
Sure. It's it is very interesting. Not only the retired players, where it's like the retired players are doing, you get Paul Pierce on TV and all he's doing is like advocating for his own legacy. You get Pat Bev on TV, all he's doing is advocating for his own legacy. But even the veterans and like the players in their prime, there's a clear distaste for the lack of infrastructure and coaches. There's a clear distaste for the lack of infrastructure for like the young men in the league.
I mean, even Dame leading
Right.
up,
Right.
just like I don't want to teach anyone how to play that, and it's like, okay, you just, oh, okay,
And I don't know how valid it is, the
yeah,
critiques, but I do know is that they're there. They're
yes,
rampant. There's a major divide in the league right now. And, you know, young players have more power than ever.
yep,
Like it used to be like a young player. Obviously, there's Kobe, for example, who was like, hey, you you better make sure I'm not there because it's not going to be good for you. Like I want to go elsewhere. He ends up in LA. Not a lot of players had that power. LeBron had the wonderful, universal symmetry to end up back in Cleveland. Who knows what would have happened otherwise? But um, these guys have way more power. They get paid a lot of money, and
yep.
not even just like because the NBA became so popular. It's not even just like your rookie scale contract, which is in a great place right now, but it's also like endorsements and it's there's like guys have more agency to kind of do what they want. And I think, man, older generations always have trouble kind of losing the grip hold a little bit. But this isn't even that. It's like the best players aren't old guys. They're just like
No, they're not.
veterans in the league. And they're like, it's such a wide ranging thing. You get like Nikola Jokic, who's like, oh yeah, Christian Brown is a winner. What a great young player. But then you have
Yes.
like, it's like infrastructure is so important and a player's buy in is so important. And it used to be that people thought like you immediately get a buy in from a rookie because they're starting their career, they want to make good. And that maybe isn't the case now the same way it
Beyond
used to be.
was talking about that with like leading up, where it's like, there's a couple guys that said like they basically, reports where they wanted to come to Toronto, and you could see a few reasons why. Some of it could be the city. I mean, personally, um, just gonna put this out there, but I would prefer to be in Toronto over Oklahoma City as a young um,
This is a
individual.
city geared towards the wealthy for what
Yeah.
it's worth. This is a
Yes.
good city to be wealthy in, you know.
Yes. And so yeah, I think the other thing too, just as a question, and I've asked everyone this, and I've got so many interesting answers. But we were talking about Kevin Porter Jr. And players that sometimes need a little bit more infrastructure. Christian Wood, where do you think he ends up?
Ah, I don't know.
See, everyone says the same. Like they like
So
it's challenging.
coaches have a tough time with Christian.
Yeah,
G League, NBA, it's been talked about a lot by
he's talented.
coaches. But yeah, he's uber talented. Uh, I don't know. I don't think he gets paid a lot of money though.
Yeah,
But I don't know where it happens. I don't know what it looks like.
Miami,
But culture. Let's
maybe,
go.
maybe.
Yeah, he needs some Reagan era austerity politics to set him right.
We won't go into that. Yes, that's that's a good one.
Certainly, yes. That's
Uh,
what Portland needs. I don't know.
so yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully you enjoyed the conversation. So, um, before I go and before Samson, Mr. Folk goes, I do have one last question, and I do ask this to some of my guests. Is there, and it doesn't have to be specifically basketball related, but is there a book that you have read that has touched your mind, touched your or shaped your career? You can obviously shout out Caitlin Cooper's book as well, of course. Hopefully one day she comes on here. But yes,
Shaped my career. Hmm. I don't know. I haven't read like the book of basketball. I haven't read, the books that are about like covering the NBA. Like I said, I
it
told you
can be a
before,
life
man.
book.
A life book. I don't know. I liked Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I bet you've read that. You seem like you would have read
Not
Sapiens, no?
not yet.
But okay, well, it's good. It's very interesting. There's a lot of different, unique parallels. It didn't change my life or anything, but it kind of changed how I thought about humanity a little bit. But also Dune. I say this every time I get asked about it.
Yes, yes.
Dune is my favorite book. I think that Dune was God so incisive and penetrating in its critique of colonialism, in its critique of the way that we treated the earth, and its critique of, I would say, charismatic leaders. And a lot of
Interesting.
people who watched the movie, a lot of people who read the book didn't have the takeaways that those were the critiques, but I will say definitively those were the critiques. And to have that book written in what, like 1964, it was very forward thinking. And I know there's a lot of lore you have to catch up on. It makes it kind of a clunky read at the start, but I always thought it was just a tremendous, and especially the first four books, I think are very philosophical and then very enlightening in that way. Maybe more so for a white guy who hasn't been subjected to some of the nastier sides of humanity. But so maybe it wouldn't be as rewarding for certain people as it maybe was for me. But Dune, I love that book. It's a big one for me.
Okay, Dune it is. You are not the only person to actually suggest that. I presented I helped host a conference that I'll tell you about another time. But there was a physician at the conference, and that was his book that he recommended. Actually, I asked the same question there as well, and there was a whole bunch of different books because I'm always interested to hear what people read and what shapes people's lives. And I always tell them it doesn't have to be related to your career. Um,
Oh, sorry then. The Communist Manifest.
oh, actually, or
It's a good book. Yeah.
okay. Fair enough. Fair. Okay,
Yeah.
so you know what? I'll put both books in the link. I won't link
Sure.
them to any. I'm not affiliated with Amazon or anything. But if I will find a way to link those and the authors down below. I have watched the movie for Dune, but I've heard about Dune enough times that I will actually read Dune when I have the chance and have a little bit more time. Samson, so grateful for you to actually come on Basketball Rewind. Hopefully, you enjoyed the conversation enough that one day I will, in the not so near future, because you're a very busy person, will, make another appearance on this. It'd be unfortunate if I wasn't recording, but I am.
Uh,
But
don't
yeah,
don't worry. Don't worry about hoping. I'll be on here again. That's no problem. I enjoyed the hell out of this, Kenny. No worries about
awesome. And also, I have to, shout out to Raptors Republic, putting on that event. I'd been reaching out to both you and Blake Murphy for a while, and it was funny because I'm not gonna dox my Insta, but when Blake had that, I think that was the first time because you and Blake were sitting next to each other, and I said the thing, and he was like, "Oh, it's you," and then you were like, "Huh?" So that was kind of funny, but it was good to meet both of you in person, of course. And I've been bugging Blake, and Blake will be here soon enough. So, yes.
it. Oh yeah.
Um, is there anything that you're looking forward to for summer? It doesn't. Again, this does not have to. Besides being in Vegas with Trey, of course.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Moving to Toronto and hanging out with Trey more. Trey's become like a really good friend. We do the podcast because we're good friends, not because he doesn't work in sports. He doesn't do sports media or anything like that. But for myself, I'm going to New Zealand for like a month in August, so that'll be a blast. I'll go do all the Lord of the Rings stuff. I'll do both islands.
Wait, when
Hopefully
are you
that's
going?
fun. Just August, basically.
Okay, so it'll be a little cold when you go.
Yep, yep.
But are you going to see the Northern Lights or Southern Lights, I should say?
I'm maybe. I've seen the Northern Lights quite a bit growing up, though, just because I grew up in Saskatchewan, where there's
Right.
less light pollution, and if you go to northern Saskatchewan, you can see them quite often. Believe.
I'm originally from Manitoba, so I understand.
Hell yeah, brother. Couple of the prairie kids out here.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's
Oh,
why we're kindred spirits. Let's say.
exactly, exactly. I mean, I'm not a lefty, and I don't have the skills that I've heard you have. Curly did tell me. That-
He's gassing it up.
so yeah.
We're all just rec league players. That's how it is.
Okay, so with that being said, it's been fun, Samson, and yeah, that's it, everyone. So take care. Leave a I forgot, like, comment, and subscribe, of course, and check out Raptors Republic or any of the links that I leave in the description down below. So yeah, that's been fun, and peace, everyone.